it's always good to talk about the contents of the presentation. So who I think I've been introduced, so I don't need to spend too much time on who I am. I have to talk about the FET sector in Ireland and ETBI Digital Library, because I've got to provide some context for my case study, Maths for Trades. And after I talk about that, I'll preach to you for a bit about what I learned and maybe what you can take away from what I did. Okay, there's a bit of a lag here, I think. Okay, yeah, that's me. Just want to mention that I worked at the Dublin Business School for quite a long time, and I developed an enthusiasm for open scholarship at DBS. You know, limited budgets, have to be creative about what we can provide, what we can buy. So we really get into using open source software and championing the cause of open access journals. And that's now been extended to open educational resources. So further education training in Ireland is controlled by ETBs, Education and Training Boards, and they're statutory local education authorities which have responsibility for a number of educational sectors and initiatives. For example, there's Youth Reach, which provides a couple of years integrated education, training and work experience for unemployed early school leavers who don't have any qualifications. They look after apprenticeships, and they also look after the post-leaving cert colleges, which are kind of a gateway or sort of middle ground between secondary education and the higher education sector. And they came about in 2013, replacing the old vocational education committees. ETBI, where I work, is the association established to represent Ireland's ETBs. So we represent them, we promote their interests, we negotiate with government, and we provide supports to ETBs. We have an IT manager who looks after IT systems that the ETBs use. We have a legal department, and we have sections for FET and primary and post-primary schools. Okay, I work in the FET Directorate. I'm a manager there. I work in planning, resourcing and reporting, and we all have, each of the sections have their own networks, which we liaise with people in the ETBs, and we meet on a regular basis with the ETB directors of further education. Okay, some numbers before I move on. From 2019, there are 180,000 enrolments in further education and training. Overall, there's about 300,000 folk go through every year. Wide range of formal education levels, wide range of start ages, and in the post-leaving cert colleges, about 20% of people progress to higher education, which is great. Okay, one of the supports that ETBI decided that they'd like to offer to ETBs in the further education training sector be a digital library. Libraries in FET are not as well established as libraries in education, so it's pretty sketchy in parts. We're not. We're based in Naas in Kildare. We have one physical office, so due to the nature of that, any library provision that we offer would have to be purely online. So, 4 prongs to my library: fork, electronic resources, a library website, peer-reviewed open access journal sectoral repository. Brief is to you'll identify and acquire electronic resources that can be used in the further education and training sector, but you can't really do that by itself. You need to provide some guidance: who should be using them, how you should use them, how you search them, then leading on to that, how you reference them and cite them in your cite sources in your assignments. That leads on to how do you plan your assignments, how do you write your assignments. So before you know it, you end up with a full academic website. So I spent the last year developing an academic library website, which hopefully caters to FET level students. What I'm looking at the moment is setting up a peer-reviewed open access journal to publish and promote research by and done in the FET sector, and that'll be followed up by creating a repository. Problem with resources, as Jane Austen might say, is that the resources that you buy for academic libraries are primarily geared towards HE, if you're doing an apprenticeship in hairdressing, you don't need access to peer-reviewed peer-reviewed scholarly journals that are published by Science Direct or whoever. So there's kind of a bit of a scarcity there. Also, there's a lot of square pegs being fit into round holes. You get bundles. A couple of years ago in DBS, I trialled a business ebook bundle which contained titles on the history of Turkish banking and sewage systems development in the Middle Ages. So they don't represent good value for money a lot of the time because you can't fine-tune what you get. Bundles are presented to you and it's take it or leave it. I also have logistical issues with making resources available. There's 16 ETBs, so there's kind of 16 student directories. There is one centralised student directory, but it's kind of a Heath Robinson, or if you're American, Rube Goldberg contraption. Sort of, it's bespoke. It's kind of doesn't really speak to systems like Easy Proxy or Shibboleth. So I have issues there. I also have issues with full-time education numbers. A lot of the time you buy resources in libraries and cost it's different tiers depending upon FTE. So if I was to buy Academic Plumbing Complete for use by 1,000 apprenticeships in Donegal, Dublin and Clare, I'd have to find out the FTE numbers of those 3 ETBs and present them to the vendors of Academic Publishing Complete. And it's tricky to do FTE numbers in further education because people come and go. So what do? Talk to people and figured out that the best thing to do would be look for resources that exist already within the FET sector or maybe start developing them. But then brings up issues about permissions. Who has the license to share them? How good are they? And are people happy to share them? There's a bit of reticence about sharing them. Don't feel that they're up to quality. So I've spent a while talking to people, and from stage left came the Supports for Apprentices group, and this is one of the networks that I briefly mentioned earlier. This is run by my colleagues, Dr. James Eustace and Siobhan McEntee. James was the work-based learning manager who deals with apprenticeships and things like that. Siobhan looks after inclusion of more folk from more disadvantaged backgrounds, and they focus with helping apprentices. And you can imagine, there's a wide range of ability in these folk. Some folk need help with their literacy and maths, so they produce supports to help apprentices. And one of the things that they did was they created these maths textbook workbooks. Alison Jones, colleague at Galway and Roscommon ETB, was very helpful there. So these were kind of individual workbooks aimed at, sorry, bear with me, aimed at craft apprentices, covering basic arithmetic and calculator use, and introduced specific areas relevant to apprenticeships, algebra, trigonometry, ratios, percentages, that kind of thing. I went to a meeting at the supports group chaired by Alison and talked about, well, the term we used was uplifting them, to make them into OERs, make them suitable for sharing, because a lot of work would need done. I looked at them, they were fine for internal use. It's a bit of a naughty analogy. You might have a liaison with them, but you wouldn't take them home to introduce them to your parents. So a lot of work needs to be done to sort of bring them up to scratch. So this is where I came in. I proofed them thoroughly. First week at ETBI, a team meeting, I pointed out a particularly egregious typo in a PowerPoint slide, and since then I've been the resident proofer. Everybody gives me things to proofread, PhD dissertations even. So I went through them all and very thoroughly and made suggestions about what should be changed and tried to enforce internal consistency, make sure that all the headings were included in tables of contents, all the bullet points were the same, and I provided a set of style guidelines for uplifting these, sort of what font should be used, consistency of the font, and the size, the colour, spacing, etc., etc. And then this comes up quite a bit. It's come up before. What I did was I talked about the licensing and how this work could be shared. There's a big gap, I think. Stacey mentioned that faculty don't have any understanding of copyright, and neither do a lot of librarians, to be honest. But so what I did was I introduced these folk to Creative Commons licenses, made us something, said, this is what you can do, you choose what you want to, how you share, and they chose well, you must provide attribution if you want to use Creative Commons licenses. No commercial use and share alike, so people are free to take, will be free to take these and modify them if they want. Librarian type stuff, attributions, how to attribute images that are used, how to reference properly. Somebody asked me if we could get an IBAN for them. And I said, what the hell is an IBAN? And eventually figured out that it meant an ISBN. So we registered with Nielsen, the agency in the UK, provide ISBNs for the UK and Ireland. And I was all set to buy them when COVID-19 struck. And so we don't have ISBNs because we have to buy them by credit card, and our procurement policy means that there has to be a finance officer there using the credit card with you. I know our office has been closed since March, so no ISBNs for us yet. So they went away, they got them properly formatted and typeset and everything, and they came back to me. I did more proofing. The soft copies I placed on our digital library website, and I've also uploaded them to the OER Commons where they will be discoverable. I've written newsletter articles about them, and I've internal newsletter or ETB newsletter, and there's this kind of a Europe-wide for the education newsletter, which I've written an article for and heavily plugged these. So to recap what I did, I communicated with colleagues, different networks. I explained the situation with acquiring resources. I described open educational resources to them. I inquired about any existing resources that could maybe be converted into OERs. I used a variety of library and personal skills to help achieve this. What I'm doing at the moment, my network is a digital library working group, and that provides some oversight over our library. It's mostly professional development and technology enhanced learning people, but also features the very wonderfully awesome Eva Hornung, who many of you Irish librarians attending here will I'm sure many of you know. So we do a bit of library oversight, but for the most part, they're happy to let me get on with it, and it's a useful tool for promoting the library. But I'm also using it to spread the word about OERs. I'm doing that a wee bit by stealth, talking about sharing resources created in ETBs. Imagine there's 16 ETBs, so hypothetically you could create the same resource 16 times. Stacey, I think, mentioned reinventing the wheel. We want to avoid that. Sharing, promoting and sharing existing resources is a good way of doing that. I'm writing a resource sharing framework, which I'll use the basis of providing a sort of OER policy. I'll discuss permissions, quality, licensing, maybe branding and design. 2 ETBs talked about sharing. The City of Dublin and Dublin and Leary are interested in sharing best practice guidelines, tools and techniques for technology enhanced learning. So hopefully we can get that out. We're also looking at collaborating with the ETBI Quality Network on a toolkit for online assessments. And finally, if I was writing this would be in highlighted and you've spotlighted in bold font and capitalisation. I have the Maths for Trades workbooks as an exemplar of an open educational resource, and some in terms of how it can be shared, where it's shared, what it can look like. So I've got that as a tool to help create for the OERs. And obviously I'm doing copyright and OER sections for our library website for staff. That's what I did. What can you do? Well, if you know the film Aliens, where they're flying to the planet with the aliens and all the space marines are fixing their equipment, and the Sigourney Weaver character Ripley, she's a bit of a fifth wheel. She says to the grizzly cigar chomping sergeant, I feel a bit of a fifth wheel. Is there anything I can do? And Sergeant Apone responds, I don't know. Is there anything you can do? So it's a librarian to get involved in OERs. is there anything you can do? Well, you can do lots. You can communicate with your colleagues, you can communicate with your network, faculty and students. You can explain the situation with resources. Resources are expensive. Academic publishing, it's a bit of a scam. E-books, very expensive, not all available. COVID-19 is really, I think, showing the intellectual bankruptcy of academic publishing, I think. So you can advocate for OER adoption and creation. You can get involved in new projects. You can maybe uplift existing resources if you know people. And this is perhaps easier for me to say because I'm at a managerial level, so I have a bit of clout. Maybe you have to convince your library managers, and maybe you have to get them on board. I was thinking there's 3 library courses, library postgraduate courses in the island of Ireland, and I think maybe it'd be a nice idea if we started practicing what we were preaching in terms of creating OERs for those courses. But in other academic libraries, you do a lot of interaction with, or some of you do a lot of interaction with staff and students. You do library inductions, you do library classes on database searching, literature reviews, information literacy, etc., etc. Maybe we could get together in groups and create OERs for use by librarians, and that refers back to what I was saying about I have the Maths for Trades workbook as an exemplar. You want to advocate for OERs, for faculty to start producing OERs. Maybe you show them what you've produced. Okay, you can lead the way. Librarians can do lots of things, have lots of skills. I mean, everyone has their own a common set of library skills. We all went through library skills. We did the same modules and everything, but we have a set of personal skills. I've got a keen eye for detail. I'm reasonably good at proofing, that kind of thing. I'm absolutely shite at marketing and promoting. Maybe you're good at marketing and promoting and you couldn't proofread to save your life, I don't know. But there's lots of ways you can get involved. There's lots of things that can be done. There's lots of aspects to creating OERs. Highlighting leadership. There's different kinds of leadership. There's the folk you'll follow over the top across the trenches and stuff. There's leadership from natural leadership, or there's leadership that's granted by authority. You have a job title, or you have a position, or in Cartman's case here, a police badge, which looks fairly satanic actually. You can make decisions and stuff, take decisions because of a consensus that that job or that position has been delegated this power. But authority also means that someone with extensive or specialised knowledge about a subject. And librarians are experts, they're authorities. We know stuff. If we don't know the stuff, we're fairly good at looking it up. So librarians don't have to be leaders when it comes to OERs, but they can lead by being experts. The journal that we're going to do at ETBI, I'm leading that because I'm what passes for a journal expert at ETBI, because I've DBS, again, we published 2 open access peer-reviewed academic journals. I was involved in one of them, so I know a bit about journal publishing. With workbooks, I led in making them, converting them into OERs, yeah, but I didn't lead in their creation in the first instance. But knowing about requirements to create and develop OERs can give you authority and help you lead. It's come up previously that there's a gap in knowing about copyright and open licenses, and that's another area where librarians can lead and get involved. Remember, you don't have to create biochemistry open resources or sociology resources all by yourself. You're going to be part of the team. It takes a village. For the Maths and Trades workbook, there are lots of different people involved. Maybe you can make the difference between being a one-off liaison and a boyfriend material, girlfriend material, using that analogy again. So there's lots of things you can do. OERs are going to happen anyway. Fantastic opportunity for librarians to be involved. If we don't get involved, it's a danger we get disintermediated. Academic librarians acquire resources for libraries, but faculty that are creating, students are creating them themselves, it might be difficult for librarians to get involved and find out what's happening. So they're going to happen with or without librarians, and I think librarians would make these OERs better. We have the authority, I think, we have the leadership, and like Jim Morrison, I'm going to say that's the end. Thank you for listening.